legendary former captain of the Aussie Diamonds netball team, Caitlin Bassett.
If you wouldn't ask that to a male athlete, don't ask it to a female athlete, because that is disrespectful.
I'd love to talk about winning the Champions League, as you know. Getting there, anything can happen, but I do think Barcelona are on a completely different level.
Shannon Tan is a rising star in the world of golf, the first Singaporean to ever win on the ladies' European tour.
When I won on my debut, I couldn't believe it happened.
The super shot. Why was it introduced?
I hate it, but that's just me as a traditional netballer.
Arya Jitanagan should have won it. She did fluff her chip shot onto the green.
That was the one that she should have tapped and it literally went like 2 centimeters.
It hardly moved.
She might as well have
She's
just
human.
blown it. World Cups in cricket and rugby, as well as European Championship football action, 2025 feels bigger than ever for women's sport.
And it comes hot on the heels of the 2024 Paris Olympics, where full gender parity was achieved on the field of play. And a recent report predicted that revenues from elite women's sport will reach, get this, $2.35 billion this year.
Well, as everything appears on the up, who are the athletes we should be looking out for? And what more progress can we all be making to further the cause of women's sport around the globe? We'll be discussing it all on this episode of This Sporting Planet.
Natalie Sawyer here with Kate Allman, and for the first time on This Sporting Planet, Colette Wong. Hello, Colette. So great to have you finally on This Sporting Planet. Welcome along.
It's so good to be here. It's a great honor for me to be joined by you guys, Natalie and Kate, and an all-women sports crew. The only thing I have to say at this moment is that I was a former colleague of Edward Russell, who appears on This Sporting Planet regularly. I could tell you all about him, but as I mentioned before, I don't have the time. I'll just give you a little bit of background about myself. I was a sports journalist for many years, I think coming on to 30 years. I came back after graduating from university in Dublin with, my degree in hand, thinking I really wanted to join the diplomatic corps because I had my degree in politics and economics. And as I was searching for jobs, this one came up with a sports broadcasting station in Singapore. And so I applied for that along with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Sports broadcasting station got back to me first, offered me the job, and the rest, as they say, is history. I worked for the local sports broadcasting station for about 5 years and then moved on to CNBC, ESPN, Fox Sports Asia. Love my sports, but I do especially love my tennis. And I've been so thankful over the years working for the likes of ESPN and Fox Sports Asia to have worked at the likes of Wimbledon, the Australian Open, all the Grand Slams, in fact. And I've got to say, Wimbledon and the Australian Open are my two favorite Grand Slams. And I'm not just saying that because Kate and Natalie are on the show, but they really are. I mean, Australia, the happy slam, how good is that? I'm a Roger Federer fan. I've now transitioned into a Yannick Sinner fan, and that's one thing I'm really happy about. He's coming back this week. He ends his 3-month ban, and I'm looking so forward to watching him play the Italian Open, and I think he heads to Hungary and then on to Roland Garros. So tennis really is my beat, and I'm so happy to be here, and I hope to be talking tennis at some stage, but I'm not sure if we'll actually broach that subject today because we've got loads to talk about, don't we, Natalie?
Oh, we certainly do. As already mentioned, this episode is a women's sports special, and we'll come on to more of that in a few minutes. But there's lots of news, of course, that's been happening around the globe. To run you through it all, we're going to start in my part of the world. And we mentioned it the last time we met up on This Sporting Planet. Liverpool are now Premier League champions for the second time in 5 years. They needed just a point from their remaining games to seal the title, but they did it in style in the end last weekend, thrashing Spurs 5-1, albeit they had to come from behind at Anfield to do so. But boy, did they party once that final whistle blew. Because if you remember, the last time that they won the Premier League was in 2020. We were in COVID times. So supporters never really got the chance to properly celebrate with the team, and they did so at Anfield. It was lit up with red flares and fans didn't leave for hours. Elsewhere, Chelsea have won the Women's Super League for a 6th consecutive season, with their nearest rivals Arsenal losing earlier in the day. Chelsea only needed a point at Manchester United expected to secure the title, but a Lucy Bronze goal sealed all 3 points for Sonia Bompasta in her first season. So it's her first league crown as well in English football. Chelsea are on course for a treble, having already won the League Cup in March. They're in the FA Cup final as well.
Now, normally Todd Harris would cover off the Americas for us, but seeing as he's not here, I'll step in to let you know what happened in a very dramatic NFL draft. Well, Miami quarterback Cam Ward was selected as the first pick. No surprises there. But it didn't take too long for draft day drama to unfold. Pick number 2 was set to go to Cleveland, but the Jacksonville Jaguars traded up to take the two-way playmaker that is known as a generational talent, that is Travis Hunter. But arguably, the biggest story surrounds Hunter's teammate from Colorado, quarterback Shedeur Sanders. Now, remember him? We spoke about him last episode with Jason Bell, and like most people, we had him pegged as a top 10 pick. Apparently, managers and coaches did not agree with us pundits, though, as Shedeur went undrafted for the first 4 rounds before being picked up by the Cleveland Browns at pick number 144. He was the second quarterback the Browns chose after getting Oregon quarterback Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd round. So it's going to be a fascinating rookie camp, you guys, between those two. Oregon and Colorado, by the way, have a massive rivalry dating back to 2023. Those two played each other. Dylan Gabriel absolutely smashed Shedeur. So it'll be fascinating who comes out on top when it's a one-on-one quarterback battle. Closer to home, 2 Aussies have taken out the double crown at Bells Beach in the World Surf League. Isabella Nichols won the women's, and Paris Olympics silver medalist Jack Robinson won the men's. And in football, down under, Auckland FC have won the premiership of the A-League men's in their debut year. Yep, Auckland is the first Kiwi team to have done it, beating the Wellington Phoenix to the plate, despite Wellington playing in the league since 2007.
Wow, that is amazing.
Isn't
That
it?
is really amazing.
They were a total stunner. They came into the league, had sellout crowds from round 1, had a massive fan base over there, you guys. And it turns out Auckland not only have fans, they can play.
Certainly, if they won it, that's extraordinary. I just want to go back to Shedeur Sanders really quickly as well, just as a little sort of everyone was talking glowingly of him, expecting him to go earlier in the rounds as well. But if there's some solace for him to take, Tom Brady, he was 199th pick, the 6th round. So there's always a chance that he could come good in terms of his career. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, you know what? Speaking of all-time greats, I'm going to start with somebody who will very likely become an all-time great. And I think this is the biggest story out of Asia, but I know it made headlines all over the world, including Australia and the United Kingdom. It's a story that comes out of the Indian Premier League about a 14-year-old boy. He's just a teenager, ladies. Smashing a century. I know, right? A century off just 35 balls. I mean, it's so mind-boggling, not just because he's 14 years old, but also because of the stage on which he accomplished this amazing feat. So remember this name. It is Vaibhav Suryavanshi. He was picked up by the Rajasthan Royals in the auction last year. He became the youngest player ever in the IPL when he made his debut against the Lucknow Giants. Now get this, his debut, right? 14 years old, first match. He's facing the very, very first ball. What does he do? Well, of course, he smashes it for a 6. And isn't it ridiculous? I mean, nobody would have expected. He just walked out there. He launched it and, no nerves, just so cool, so comfortable, pure confidence. And then it doesn't stop there.
I saw his highlights come up on our news, Colette, and it was sort of hard to believe. I thought maybe, is it April Fool's? No, we're a month late. So it was actually incredible, phenomenal.
Yeah, phenomenal. I mean, because of the fact that he's 14 years old, and there's a little bit of controversy about that, which I'll get to in just a moment, because I do want to get onto that amazing feat he accomplished a few games later against the Gujarat Titans, that century of 35 balls, and he smashed 11 sixes as well as 7 fours and helped Rajasthan to an 8-wicket victory. That was, by the way, the second fastest 100 in IPL history, and that's second only to Chris Gale, who achieved that in 30 balls. But mind you, Chris Gale was a full-grown man. he was a full adult when he achieved that back. I think it was in 2013, if I'm not mistaken. It also makes him the youngest and fastest Indian ever to score 100. And yes, I'll repeat this again. He's only 14 years old. Back to that controversy, there's some critics, skeptics who are not really sure whether he is 14 years old, mainly because of how he looks, how strong he is, and how good he is, obviously, in cricket, but also because of a video that surfaced in recently that he did in 2023 when he himself said that he was going to be 15 on his next birthday. So that was back in 2023. So that's why the question marks have come out. But his father has strongly defended the listed age. He says he's got proof, bone density tests that were done when he was 8 or 9 years old and verified by the BCCI. So it's an incredible fairy tale story. Comes from a very, very poor family. They come from the east of India in Bihar near the Nepal border. And the father had to sell his farm. This was the primary source of income for this family, but he had the knowledge and he had the insight to know that his son had some special kind of talent. And look where he is now. So that's just an incredible story. I just want to come closer to home for another incredible story for me anyway, personally. I played hockey when I was in school, and hockey's
Hey, so
always
did
been
I.
a big thing
I'm a
for me.
hockey player.
Yes. Yeah, and I absolutely loved it. I played it very, very later on in my school life. I only picked it up when I was 16 years old, but it was the best sport I ever played. I mean, I did softball and tennis, but there's something about hockey, Kate, you know, the camaraderie amongst hockey players. Anyway, and it's such a rough sport, which I loved as well. But Singapore have just won the Asian Hockey Federation Cup for the first time ever. Now, this is a second-tier event, so it's played by countries like Uzbekistan and Hong Kong, Sri Lanka. They played Chinese Taipei in the final. Singapore played Chinese Taipei in the group stage as well and lost. So when they came up against Chinese Taipei in the final and went a goal down, I was thinking, oh my goodness, you know, it's never going to happen. But they pulled together and, you know, they scored another goal. They pushed it into penalties and Singapore won 3-2. It was just an amazing final to watch. And I spoke to the team manager right after the match. Her name is Siu Hua. And I said, you know, what was behind this incredible performance by these girls? And she said, you know, they're not full-time hockey players. All of them have a full-time job or they're students, but the camaraderie of this team and also the fact that they have a new coach. His name is Henry Wong. They hired him about 1.5 years ago, and he's come in with a goal, and he wants this team to clinch the gold medal at the Southeast Asian Games, which is coming up later this year in Thailand. And they've also really got this team together. I mean, camaraderie wise, I keep saying that, but she kept pushing that to me as well. And they've really played like a team. And the best thing of part of all, the player of the tournament was from Singapore, just a 17-year-old girl. Her name is Diana Ong. And it's such a heartwarming story, guys, because Singapore doesn't really get anywhere, but they've won this tournament. So to me, that was the sporting highlight of my week.
Fabulous. Well, and that's great to plug that as well. And more youngsters to look out for that you've mentioned. Incredible. It's good to know the next generation are coming through in various sports. But just a reminder, in between episodes, you can keep up to date with all the global sports news on our social channels and YouTube page, including full-length interviews with all of our guests. Give us a follow, subscribe, and share with all your friends and family. But please also do leave us a review as well.
Right, I've got my pink jacket on. It is the Women's Sports Special. So let's begin our deep dive into women's sport across the globe. And coming up a little later in the program, we'll be hearing from former England footballer and UEFA Women's Cup winner, Lianne Sanderson. But first, on to the leading female participation sport down under. You guys, this might surprise you. It's played by more than 1 million Australians. It's netball. And I'm delighted to say we're joined by legendary former captain of the Aussie Diamonds netball team, Caitlin Bassett. Seabass is a dual netball world champion. She's a Commonwealth Games gold and silver medalist, a Super Netball Premiership player. And after hanging up the netball bib a few years ago, she's still hanging around the court as a Fox netball commentator, now working with Super Rugby Club, the Western Force, as a player development manager. Seabass, it's been a few years since you hung up the netball bib. You're an incredibly busy woman these days. Give us an insight into what you've been up to.
Oh, how far do you want me to go back, Kate? So when I did officially retire, I was based in Sydney, and I actually couldn't return back to my hometown of Perth because the border was closed due to COVID. So I had to get a job in Sydney, and I ended up getting a role working in another sport in cricket as a player development manager, which I knew nothing about cricket, but I had all these experiences as an elite athlete, and that kind of got my foot in the door. And I really, really loved it. It was probably the best transition out of netball I could have asked for because I went from playing in one team to joining a completely different team. But this time I didn't have to exercise. So it was awesome. My job is to help the athletes with their life off the cricket pitch and personal development, helping them with their study options and just build an identity away from the ground, which was great. Then I fell in love with someone in Sydney and decided to
It
move
wasn't
back.
me.
It
That
wasn't
was
you.
me.
No,
That
no.
was someone else.
I met someone in Sydney and decided to uproot our life. Even though I loved my job, we moved back to Perth. I was dabbling a little bit in the media when I was in Sydney because that's what I've got a degree in, broadcast and journalism. And so when I got back to Perth, I started working as a journalist, a sports journalist for the West Australian, which is the newspaper here. And then after 12 months of that, I've just picked up another role working in player development again, but this time in rugby. So I'm working with the Western Force. So I'm just trying to get every code under my belt, basically. And I'm also playing AFLW, which is
Yeah.
Australian rules football as well. So I just want to do everything.
So Natalie and Colette, you can tell that Seabass is a bit of an underachiever. So just Seabass as well. The AFL, for everyone who doesn't know it, who's watching around the world or listening, AFL is Australian Football League, and obviously there's a real advantage to being tall in the AFL. And I think that Seabass was headhunted. Just how many centimeters tall are you, Seabass?
So I'm 192 centimeters tall, which
Okay.
is
Oh,
6'4" roughly. And in netball, it was perfect because as a goal shooter, which was my position, I was told to stand still. They would bring the ball down to me and I would shoot all the goals. Happy days. However, in AFL, I play this role called ruck, which unfortunately means I have to tap the ball down from the bounce and then have to run around like a mad woman for the entire game. So it's definitely a lot more challenging than what I experienced in netball.
For those who are paying attention or maybe not, Super Netball season just started down under. We're about 3 weeks in, fourth round coming up. For those who don't know, tell us a little bit about Netball. How does it differ from the international code? And who are the teams and players to watch this season?
Well, look, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn when I say it is the best netball competition in the world, and all the best players from around the globe fight for a contract to play in what we call SSN, Suncorp Super Netball. It started, oh gosh, in 2017. We already had a competition here in Australia. We played some New Zealand teams, but we kind of broke away from them and we decided to add 3 new teams into the competition. I grew up playing here in Western Australia, so I played for the West Coast Fever, and then I decided to defect to the Sunshine Coast Lightning, which was a brand new team starting over in the Sunshine Coast, and we won the first 2 seasons back to back. So it was a pretty exciting start to Suncorp Super Netball, and as the competition has developed, they've changed rules, and one of the major differences, I guess, from what we play in international level netball is we have the super shot, which is a space of about 2 meters out from the post, which is worth 2 points in the last 5 minutes of every quarter. So that kind of adds a little bit of extra spice. And we also have rolling subs. So kind of like in basketball, you don't have to call time. Players can just run on and off the court in the background. So that keeps everything super fast. We have really fit, ferocious and fierce players who are throwing their bodies around on court for 60 minutes. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. And yeah, I guess at the moment, like I said, we attract the best netballers in the world, and competition for spots is really, really tight here in Australia.
Going back onto the super shot, why was it introduced into your super
You don't want to
netball?
get Seabass
No, I know.
started
No,
on the super shot.
I don't want to go
Super
too
shot.
deep into it. I
It
know
is
the
most
reasons.
controversial rule in Australian netball, and there is a love-hate. You're nowhere in the middle. I love it. I adore it. I think it's very exciting. When you're there live, they turn on music and there's like a big super shot siren, and it's very exciting for the live viewer. Having said that, I'm not a netball player. Seabass, as a shooter, how do you
But this
feel
is
about it?
Well, this is what I was going to ask you, Caitlin, because obviously, to me, I don't watch Super Netball, so I've never seen the Super Shot really. But it sounds as though they're just trying to jazz it up a bit, trying to introduce new fans to the sport rather than, as me being a bit more of a traditionalist, liking the traditional type netball. So, yeah, you tell me why they did it.
This is true. And netball, very similar to cricket, has a lot of rusted on tradition. And so there was a lot of pushback when the Super Shot first got announced. But in saying that, with the rise of all these other female sports, we've got to kind of step up to the plate and show that our game can evolve and something different, and be accessible to a different fan group that maybe didn't like the traditional way of playing netball. So me, as more of a traditional and obviously a goal shooter, it affected me a lot. I don't love the Super Shot because I think it actually hides at times when a team is doing well and they're performing really well. If you've got a Super Shot specialist on your team, they can peg back that deficit really quickly, and it's maybe not the best team that's won. Technically, I understand it's completely different. But for me, I think there's a disconnect as well that it's not played internationally. So it's kind of confusing because, if you're pushing for Australian selection, do you focus on being a good Super Shot shooter? We see a lot of imports coming over to Australia, and a lot of them are goal shooters. So it makes it really challenging for that position and for you to kind of develop if you're not getting court time. So yeah, it's a tough thing. Does it make the game more interesting? Does it add more money? We haven't seen any of those factors yet. I think it's one of those things that maybe in a few more years' time will tell. I hate it, but that's just me as a traditional netballer.
I know it's a little bit Singapore centric, but in terms of Asia, Singapore is one of the top teams in Asia. And Asia's a huge continent, but we're still so far away from all the top teams in netball. I mean, so from what you've seen, is it more of the lack of facilities, the lack of infrastructure, coaching? I mean, what is setting us back?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to play in the 2011 World Championships in Singapore. So that was amazing. And Singapore obviously got to be a part of that competition at the time. And unfortunately, in netball, there is quite a big gap between the top 5 or 6 countries at the moment and the rest of the world. And I think that's
Yeah.
because we have access to elite coaching staff, we have elite facilities. We really have, like a huge range of athletes. Like Australia is obviously a sporting mad country. So we have like so many athletes that we can choose from, and the competition for spots is particularly hard. So I think when I've seen growth across other countries, and what I've really loved is some of my former teammates are now going and coaching and helping out in other countries and help bring the standard up. And a lot of that is, different tactics. It's about giving them access to different drills and skills at training, really pushing the standard. And then the other exciting thing I think is girls who have played here in Australia and don't have the opportunity to play for Australia because they maybe not at that level, going and playing for a country where they may have citizenship. So that's been really exciting as well to see some players go back, and we've had Australian players play for Scotland and England, and go back and in Europe at the moment, and really try and help out some of those countries bring up the level.
So what you're saying is the Aussies have to help out everyone, is that right?
Yes,
Sorry,
I
Natalie.
think we're really
Yeah.
lucky here in Australia, the high performance environments we get to train under, and it's no surprise then that we do so well in the major championships. But like from a personal perspective, traveling to Jamaica and some of the incredible athletes they have there, if they
Yeah.
had better high performance setups, they'd probably whip us at every major competition. And they're slowly starting to catch on to that fact. So, I get really excited when I think of Europe and America, and China, that have huge populations in Europe that could really start, elevating netball to a really world-class level competition, because we do want to be an Olympic sport one day. And to do that, we need more countries to come on board.
When you've switched over into journalism now, how do you think you've been viewed as a journalist? Does it help that you have the sporting background, or not really? Is it still a difficult challenge as being a woman as a sporting journalist?
Yes. So within 10 journos, there was myself and another woman. So yeah, we often got referred to as hey guys or blokes or good work boys in group emails because there were just so many men. Apologies, I have a giant dog and he's very excited to see me.
Oh, where's
Um,
Chino? Chino, get on the call. Get
yeah.
Chino in.
Yeah, so that was hard because, in amongst the daily pictures for stories, they'd have all theirs, and, speaking up as a female is sometimes quite challenging, and saying, well, what coverage are we doing for the men? For example, in AFL, why aren't we doing the exact same coverage for the females when AFLW started? So even just having a voice like that in the background, nagging at them, I think at times they didn't enjoy. But hey, that was my job. But yeah, like I guess for me, like I probably wasn't the best journo, and the reason why I'm transitioning out of writing and back into the player development space is that I would have a conversation with a player and I would build a rapport with them and they'd tell me something and I'd be like, I know this is a great headline and a great story, but I'm not going to throw you under the bus with it, because I'd been thrown under the bus so many times by journalists and I didn't want to have that confrontational relationship and know that if I called that player again, they wouldn't answer the phone because I'd put out some salacious headline. So I think from that point of view, I was a bit of a poor journalist because I was still kind of on the athlete's fence and looking out for the athlete. But in saying that, I could really advocate and I would write weekly columns and say, no, like, you can't write about this. This is something that's really important. Or, hey, the boys are getting this, but the girls are getting this. Let's write about this. Like, this is the stuff that people don't know about. So I guess that was kind of my advantage.
Seabass, I think I know more than Colette and Natalie how the media treated you when you were playing. And to wrap things up, I think it'd be really good to have your insights on whether that has changed. I know there was a lot of criticism of you, particularly when Australia missed winning the gold medal at the 2018 Com Games and Natalie's Roses beat us by 1 point. There was a lot of expectation on the team. You were the captain and it was expected that you would win and you didn't. And I think it just unraveled from there with the criticism. But is any of that, do you think, justified? And do you think that you would have been treated differently, or you would be treated differently now if you're a male athlete?
Yeah, look, it's hard to say. Look, as you know, I want to get to the stage where we stop talking about male and female athletes and we stop putting genders on different sports. But I think, especially in female sport at the moment, any attention is good attention. And so having that criticism and being under the spotlight is what the men get every day. And so if we're asking for more attention, we need to be able to weather that ourselves and really stand up. And you only get used to it by actually living it and doing it. And you know, I'm at no level of superstardom. I can imagine if you were taking your kid out for a coffee and you were getting, you know, paparazzi chasing you down the street, that might get quite annoying. But I get excited to think that one day people would recognize a female athlete on the street. I mean, the fact that I'm gigantic, I definitely get recognized at times. Most people say to me, though, are you Lauren Jackson? So, I mean, there's still a little bit of confusion there between what sport I play. But, you know, it is the media's job to ask hard questions at times, and to write the truth. And, you know, if we keep treating females as fluffy and soft, like what you see on a netball court is definitely not fluffy and soft. Like, those girls are going hard. They want to be treated with respect. And I think part of that respect is treating them like any other athlete.
I can't remember who it was, but I think there was a lioness that said exactly the same sort of thing during, forgive me again, was it the World Cup, where she had said, look, if you're going to criticize us like the men. We don't want to be, like you say, treated differently because we're playing the same sport, essentially. So as horrible as it is for it to be personal, at the end of the day, if we want it to be equal across the board, then you got to review everything the same way, I suppose.
Yes. And I would always kind of challenge the men at work to, would you ask a male that question? Because I get really, really cranky at tennis for some reason. There's always tennis press conferences when journalists ask some sexist comment or, you know,
yes.
what about your outfit? Or like,
Yes.
what about the person you're dating? And I'm just like, grow up. If you wouldn't ask that to a male athlete, don't ask it to a female athlete, because that is disrespectful. And I think, unfortunately, still we're in the era that a lot of men with a microphone potentially sitting there looking at a female athlete going, oh, well, I could do what you do easily. But it's not the case. Like, oh, man, I love it when men get shown up by female athletes. It just makes my heart sing.
And also when they show up, the men in the newsroom as well, which you now have an experience of both, which is fantastic. Because we all know, you know, the girls have to work 10 times as hard as the guys when we're, you know, doing the same job. Seabass, I appreciate you. We all appreciate you coming on. It has been so great to have you, and we hope you maybe come on again another time later in future and join us. You're part of this sporting planet now.
No worries. Thanks so much for having me, and great work. Thank you for sharing, you know, women's stories. It's so important. You guys are really making a difference. So don't ever, ever, ever forget that.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate you.
Brilliant to hear from Caitlin there on the podcast. And coming up a little later on in the programme, we're going to be hearing from the golfing Singapore sensation that is Shannon Tan, who's been speaking to our very own Colette. But now let's turn our attentions to football or soccer, because there are so many stories to look at right now, particularly here in Europe. In a couple of months' time, the UEFA Women's Euros will be heading to Switzerland, with England looking to defend their title. Before that, though, in Lisbon on May the 24th, Arsenal and Barcelona will compete compete for the 2025 Champions League title. Someone who knows what it's like to play in both competitions and to win European football's biggest club trophy is former Arsenal, Chelsea and Juventus player Lianne Sanderson. I've been catching up with her, and we began by discussing what Arsenal can expect when facing one of the best sides in Europe in that final in just a couple of weeks' time.
When you're the underdog, sometimes the pressure is on the other team. But I think the only thing that matters is getting there. Getting there, anything can happen. But I do think Barcelona are on a completely different level. And every single time Chelsea played them in the semi-final, or when they played them in the final, there's this I don't think people are educated enough as to know how good Barcelona are. And I'm not quite sure. I heard a lot of different pundits before the game against Chelsea saying Chelsea were going to win. And I'm like, have they seen this Barcelona team? They've got Alexia Putellas, Bonmati, Paraluela. Like, the list could go on. And these are players. Last 4 Ballon d'Ors have been won by those 2 players. Like, they're a top team. So I think sometimes there's a little bit of ignorance when it comes to women's football, England teams. They're like, I want them to go all the way, but you have to not discredit these teams like Barcelona. So I hope Arsenal can do it. I believe they can do it. They're going to have strong fan base going out there to Lisbon. I'll be there, and I'll be so emotional. If Arsenal were to win it and I was to be there, Natalie, on the sideline doing it the game, I'd be just so thrilled.
You've already sort of hinted to us how incredible this Barcelona side are. Are they the best side in Europe right now?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, without a doubt, I think every single year consistently, it's always usually a Lyon versus Barcelona final 9 times out of 10. If it wasn't Lyon, there was one year there was Chelsea, Wolfsburg previously as well, were pushing not too long ago. So I don't know. I just love this Barcelona team. And I think, thing is, Natalie, when you watch them live, right? Similar to men's football, women's football, whatever, you have a true understanding for these players individually when you watch them live. You can watch them on TV and they still look amazing. But every single time I see Chelsea play against Barcelona seem to just always take it to another level, and Chelsea can't seem to live up to the expectation in that game. The pressure, for some reason, against Barcelona seems to get to them. I think there's a psychological edge.
Who should Arsenal be wary of then in this Barcelona team? I'm assuming most of them, but is there any particular player that you'd pick out?
Yeah, I mean, Alexia Putellas, she's been incredible. She had her ACL injury a couple of years ago and it took her a little while to kind of back, and it does happen, but she's one of the best in the world. Bonmati is the best in the world. Caroline Graham-Hansen as well. She's a fantastic player. It's almost similar to Merida Caldente when she was at Barcelona. Goes under the radar because there's Bonmati and Putellas. So therefore everyone focuses on those players. But I think Caroline Graham-Hansen, I mean, just to summarise, their centre-back takes corners, Mappy Lyon. So, they are just so good, technically, is the point I'm making. I've never known a centre-back to be the corner taker because they are the best technically at that action. And I just feel the thing that separates Barcelona from everybody else, they're so comfortable on the ball. The way they ping the ball into each other, they move around the pitch in triangles, and they never, they play out from the back, which I'm not a big fan of always, right? But they never panic, and they never turn over the ball in those areas. So, I don't know, they are the best, and they're the best for a reason, and I love watching them. And hopefully they have a similar performance like Lyon did against Arsenal in the final, and, Arsenal can get the job done, but it's going to be difficult.
Lianne, you've played obviously in a number of leagues across the world, England, the US, Spain, Cyprus, Italy. How do you assess the strength of women's football around the world right now?
Yeah, I definitely think I really hate saying it's growing because I think that's such a cliche thing to say, because at what point do we say we've actually made it and can celebrate, where we're at? And I often have that conversation internally as well. I'm like, at what point are we just going to be this is amazing, all these different events that are on for the women's game. But the one thing I think I will judge the success on globally is the amount of young girls that are getting into playing. I think it's incredible. And the fact that men and boys now have Beth Mead shirts. Do you know what I mean? And Alex Morgan on the back of their shirt. That never used to happen back in the day. I was only girl playing in an all boys team. So I love the fact that there's more girls, boys, men, demographic of the fans have changed, which I love. But I think globally, there's still a long way to go, Natalie. I've started off on a positive, but there is still so much to do with regards to even the attendances in the WSL, in the NWSL, and globally. Lyon, don't get a high attendance, and they're second best team in the world.
And you mentioned Arsenal, they play at the Emirates, and that's now their home, which is fabulous to see. But is that something you are in favour of, that more teams get to play at the bigger stadiums that are with the men's, where the men's team tend to play too?
if they can sell out, Arsenal, we can sell out. And it's because since 1987, they've been building that club. I was doing photo shoots with Thierry Henry, Dennis Bergkamp, and we were in the club shop. So people knew us because we were winning. And we've always been respected. But if you look at Chelsea last weekend, they're in the semi-final of the Champions League against Barcelona. We can say it's a fantastic attendance, 25,000, which it is, but it's not really in reality. Because why are fans not coming? It's a semi-final of the Champions League. Even Man United women at Lee Valley don't sell out. Manchester City, they play at the Academy Boys Stadium, they don't sell out. So it's why are they not selling out stadiums? And yeah, I just think there is still a lot of work to do with regards to attendances. That's my only thing. But other than that, I'm pretty happy with where the game's at.
Thank you very much to Lianne Sanderson for joining us on the show. And you can hear my full chat with her on this Sporting Planet's YouTube channel. So, Colette and Kate, the Champions League final, it is going to be extraordinary. More so for Arsenal than it is for Barcelona, because Arsenal are the holders, they're old hats at this. They know exactly what to do when it comes to the Champions League. But for Arsenal, it's been some time since they've competed in a European final. I think it's 18 years. It's quite extraordinary, their story. And what's even more extraordinary about their story is that it all began in qualifying. And so they've played, I think, 14 Champions League matches to get to the final. No team has ever done that before in this format. And their season, when it comes to the Champions League, has been all about comebacks, because they had to come from behind in their final qualifier to get into the group stage. They lost their first group game to Bayern Munich, had to replace their manager. René Slagers then came in and just went on this fantastic run to win all 5 remaining group games. Then in the quarterfinals, they had to come from behind to beat Real Madrid. Likewise, they had to do that in the semi-finals as well against Lyon, who have this huge pedigree as well when it comes to European football. So there's something perhaps written in the stars, it feels like, for Arsenal, perhaps, that they might well be able to get the job done against Barcelona. But it's a fantastic story.
Doesn't it make you nervous that they keep having to come from behind, though? I
Hmm.
mean, I feel like against Barcelona, the reigning champions, isn't that going to be a bit tricky?
Well, yeah, especially as you don't have a second leg to come back from,
Yeah.
or to come back in, I should say, because obviously the first leg against Real Madrid in the quarterfinals, they were 2-0 down, won the second leg 3-0. They were 2-1 down in the semi-final first leg and then went on to win that one 4-1. So yeah, there's no second chances for them. So they've got to get the job done, hopefully in 90 minutes, but it obviously can go beyond that as well. It was a very different story for Barcelona, who lost their first group game against Manchester City, but then went on to hammer Hammarby 9, put 9 past them in their group game. I think they conceded 3 goals, scored 26 in their group stage as well. Breezed past Wolfsburg in the quarterfinals, 10-2 on aggregate. The problem is, I suppose, for Arsenal, is Barcelona know how to get the job done, and that's something that
Yeah.
a lot of those Arsenal players don't really know. They've never experienced before. But someone to mention who is key for Arsenal is Mariona Caldente, who actually played for Barcelona last year. So she was part of the Champions League winning team. So they're going to have to tap into her experience, tap into her knowledge perhaps of that Barcelona team. She's got the experience, the nous, perhaps the gamesmanship, the game management that is needed maybe to win.
You forgot to mention the 2 key players as well in Arsenal, the Caitlin Ford and Steph Catleys of the world. And Ford did score in that game. So
Yes, she
she's
did.
been a bit of a superstar. And certainly everyone back here is watching her, and as well as Steph Catley, the 2 Matildas. But we are also turning our attention down under to the semi-finals and finals of the AFC Women's Champions League, you guys. This is the very first year of the women's format of the Asian Champions League. And Melbourne City from Australia will play the Incheon Red Angels in Wuhan, while Wuhan Jiangda play Ho Chi Minh City. It's an interesting finals format, you guys, because everyone flies into Wuhan. I'll be commentating. This is why I know this. And you play your semi-finals 2 days before the finals. So it's a 2-leg bang bang, and you're there. You're going to play 2 very high quality football matches 2 days apart. So it's a lot of pressure on the players, and I'm fascinated to watch how it plays out. Certainly for Melbourne City, a massive opportunity. As you know, they've gone undefeated through the season here. They're playing semi-finals in the A-League this weekend, and everyone's got their money on them to get both the Premier's Plate and the Championship. So in terms of teams to send to your first Asian Women's Champions League, it is the best of the best. And on that topic, it's been high risk for ACL injuries. I don't know if you guys saw, but FIFA is going to be funding a study into the risk of ACL injuries in women, which I find fascinating. Sam Kerr obviously did her ACL just after I did
Hmm.
mine, or just around about that time. But there's research that suggests female footballers are 2 to 6 times more likely to suffer the injury than their male counterparts.
That's really interesting because there's something in being said in Singapore. So we play a lot of the games in Singapore on artificial turf.
Yeah.
Natural grass is just a little bit too hard to maintain here. So a lot of the stadiums are now played on artificial turf. And very recently, a number of national team players, as well as club players, but it became amplified when the national team players started coming down with very similar injuries. And they were putting the blame down on the fact that they were playing too many games on artificial turf in Singapore. And I remember once there was a national team game where Singapore was participating in, and I think there were like 3 or 4 players who were out with exactly the same
Wow.
injury, and key players as well. So that is a problem, but it's interesting to hear that it is even more of a problem amongst women football players. That
Well,
was really
Colette, they're
interesting.
actually, yeah, they're going to look at the hormonal profile of women across the month, because there is some research that suggests the high estrogen around the time of ovulation during the cycle can
Yeah,
contribute to
makes
ligament
sense.
laxity and potentially a higher risk of ACL injury. So it's really fascinating. And obviously, I am a massive nerd about this, having just come back from an ACL rehab. But these rehabs, it is the hardest injury in sport. It keeps players out for a year. It's been 16 months for Sam Kerr, arguably one of the best female footballers in the world. So if we can reduce them somehow, I think there's a real incentive for FIFA to do that study.
Yeah, it's about time when you consider, as you say, the number of female players that are picking up ACL injuries. I mean, from an England perspective, Leah Williamson had to miss the World Cup, being Lioness captain, because of an ACL injury that she had suffered. And like you say, hormonal issues is one of the things I'll be looking at. I know there's something to do with hips as well. They're
Yep.
examining hips and whether that is an issue as well, because obviously women's hips are different to men's. The boot has often been, again, something that's been talked about. Maybe the structure of a boot for a woman has to be different to a man's. And I know that I think there is, was it Puma that came up with a boot specifically for women, but there aren't many brands that are actually specifically designing boots for women. And any kind of investigation, like as you say, by FIFA to look into this to help women is only going to be a massive bonus, certainly for our women footballers. And what I wanted to quickly ask you, Colette, as well, because obviously we know about the WSL, and goodness me, they not that long ago announced a new 3-year partnership with Barclays, which is going to bring £45 million into
Wow.
the women's football over here. And the WSL is just getting bigger and bigger. Kate, you've mentioned it, a number of players coming over here. For coming to England, I should say, from Australia, from the US, for example. Chelsea have not that long ago broke the world record, in fact, as well. What's the state of football like in your area?
Well, here in Asia, I've got to say Japan seem to be doing things right. Their domestic league is called the WE League, and they have big sponsorship from the likes of Sonpo Group. Adidas and Yanmar are also big sponsors. There's a great tradition of women's football in Japan. We just have to look back at the 2011 World Cup when they beat the United States of America on penalties in the final to win the very first World Cup for Japan. And just recently, they also clinched the She Believes Cup. That's a little league tournament that was played between Colombia, Australia, the USA, and Japan. I'm just going to run through some rankings of Asian women's football teams for you here. Japan are currently 5th. North Korea are 9th in the world. Australia are 16th, followed by China in 17th and South Korea in 19th position. Vietnam are 37th, so that puts them as the best Southeast Asian team in the world. As for Singapore, my country, well, we're ranked 139. All right, ladies, I know we can talk about football all day, but what I do really want to bring up right now is golf and the strength of women's golf here in Asia as well as Australia. I mean, we've got the likes of Lydia Ko and Yuka Saso, Amy Yang, Park In-bi. to the very latest major winner, Mao Saigo. This part of the world just feels like the epicenter of golf right now and has really felt like that for a couple of years. One of the names who could soon be joining the likes of Inbee Park and Amy Young and Lydia Ko on the bigger stage is Shannon Tan. She's a 21-year-old Singaporean who won on her LET debut back in February 2024. She's a very, very busy young woman, but she made the time to speak to me a few days ago. Shannon, welcome to the show. I believe you are back in this part of the world. I'm in Singapore. You're in Johor. How good does it feel to be back home?
Yeah, definitely really great to be back home. I got 3 weeks in between my events from South Africa to Korea. So yeah, it's good to be home with family and to catch up and to see them, I guess. It's been quite a while since I've seen them.
Now, I just rattled off a few accomplishments of yours in that very brief introduction. And the wonderful thing is that it's all kind of come together in the last 18 months. So I wanted to ask you, how would you sum up the last year and a half for yourself as a professional golfer?
I mean, I would say a lot has happened, like from going to qualifying school while still in college, still in my sophomore year in college, and then getting my tour card, winning on my debut on the LET, and then teeing it up at the Olympics, and then making the cut at the Open, finishing 6th on the Order of Merit. So I would say a lot has definitely happened in the past 18 months and since turning professional. But I mean, it's a good thing when a lot of these things happened and you know that your decision has paid off.
Does it still feel like a dream for you? You know, do you still kind of wake up and feel like you have to pinch yourself?
I wouldn't really think so. I mean, to be fair, when I won on my debut, I kind of couldn't believe it happened, but at the same time I was like, oh, it's just another day. Like, I think at this point
Amazing.
I'm just taking whatever comes at me.
Now, you mentioned winning on your debut, so I'd like to take you back to that time. I think it was 13, 14 months ago. Can you take us back to the final round before you teed off? I believe you were in a share of the lead going to the final round in Kenya. Can you take us through what was going through your mind at that moment? Was the victory in sight? Did you feel like the victory was in sight, or was that out of your mind as you teed off?
So yeah, on that particular morning, I know I woke up feeling a bit nervous and excited at the same time. But I think I knew once I got on the golf course, I'll be fine. Like, once I got out there, and I know I'll be comfortable, and I know I've been in this situation before, and I know that I've hit enough golf shots in practice, and it's just another round of golf at the end of the day. Like, so I think in the morning I was definitely a bit nervous and just felt probably adrenaline as well. But I knew like when I was on the course, I was fine.
Now, it's been an extraordinary year for you. Apart from winning your very first LET event, you also qualified to play in the Olympic Games. You also qualified to play in a couple of major tournaments. I'm just wondering which of those moments really hit you emotionally and why?
I would probably say the Olympics hit me the most emotionally. I mean, the Olympics is just like the biggest sporting stage, and like it's the pinnacle of sport for most sports. So I mean, to wear the national flag, and I mean, on that first tee box, I just felt a lot of adrenaline and felt good. I mean, it turned out well. Like, I remember I hit that drive pretty far. Like, had a lot of adrenaline that moment. But I mean, overall, just really honored and proud to have represented Singapore and be the first Singaporean golfer to tee up at the Olympics as well.
I wanted to ask you as well, you know, you've achieved things that no other Singaporean golfer, male or female, has ever achieved before. What do you think it is about your approach, your mindset that has allowed you to get to where you are?
I think I kind of live by a few quotes. So like, try to get 1% better every day, control the controllables. And also golf is a sport where it requires a lot of patience. So if something doesn't work out, they just keep trusting the process. So I think I live by those quotes.
Well, it sounds like it keeps getting better and better for you, Shannon. But just looking ahead, what does success to you look like in, say, 3 years from now?
I mean, definitely getting my LPGA tour card is something that I've always wanted. Like, I've always watched those events on TV as a kid, or like growing up, just always watched the LPGA players, and basically learned from them, like watching them play. So I mean, playing on like the biggest stage in women's golf is definitely one of the things I'm working towards.
Well, we certainly look forward to watching you pursue your dreams. Shannon Tan, thank you so much for your time and all the best. Hope you have a lovely time back home, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you, and thanks for having me as well.
Yeah, it was really great to catch up with Shannon. She's an extraordinary young woman, ladies. I first met her when she was about 15 or 16 years old, and she was an extremely shy girl. And now, 5 years on, she is representing Singapore. She's flying the flag for us, and she's really owning it. Now, she knows that her family has made a lot of sacrifices for her. What didn't come up in that interview was that at the age of 14, the whole family moved to the Gold Coast in order to allow her to pursue her career in golf. And that meant the father giving up his job and having to set up a business by himself in Australia. So a lot of sacrifices. And that has spurred her on even more. And what is incredible is that she seems to be taking it all in her stride. She spends a lot of time traveling alone without her family. She has a caddy. And that's it, it's just her and her caddy. But whatever setup she has with her family, with the people who do support her, it seems to be working very, very well. She's really blazing a trail, and sometimes all you need is one person to set things in motion. So I think Shannon is doing great things for herself, but by doing what she's doing and achieving what she's achieving, this will have amazing repercussions for young Singaporean golfers who are chasing the same dream. I mean, Kate, just look at Kari Webb. Remember her in the 1990s and early 2000s? I think she put Australia on the golfing map. She was the first player ever to win $1 million in one LPGA season. She won 7 majors, dozens of LPGA titles. And I think she's the reason why the likes of Hannah Green and Minjee Lee are even here playing golf and succeeding as well, Kate.
Oh, you're absolutely 100% right, Colette. I can tell you I cover a lot of golf down here, and I've interviewed most of those names. Every single one of them has mentioned Carrie Webb. She was such a trailblazer. And just looking at how women's golf has progressed since then, it's just fascinating seeing how the growth, and we talked about this with Seabass, but the money that has been involved, it's grown exponentially. And as a result, the talent has been able to follow. Traveling on the LPGA tour or the LET is very intensive. It's grueling, but it's expensive. And these players have to pay their own way around the world, from when they're an amateur to when they get on the tour. And they spend so much money, so much time. I know that Lydia Ko, she told me she's away for 30 weeks at 26 events on average in a standard year. Obviously, she is one of the best. But if you think about those other players that are a little lower down that are trying to make it, and they're not getting the huge prize money that maybe the top players are, it's a lot. So yeah, it's just awesome to see new young guns, especially out of Singapore. It's fascinating as well, guys, how much talent there is in Asia in golf.
Yeah, if I can say, I think it all started with the South Korean phenomenon that is Sairi Park. Do you remember when she won the US Open in 1998? That really lit a fire in women's golf across Asia. Her success inspired this generation of young golfers, which we are seeing right now. And it's not just Koreans. The Japanese have produced some exceptional stars like Nasa Hataoka and Hinako Shibino, and now Hibino as well, and Mao Saigo, who's just won the Chevron Championship. We've got China's Yin Ruoning, who reached world number 1 back in 2023. And of course, in Southeast Asia, the Thai stars are really emerging and have been for a couple of years now. The likes of Arya Jutanugarn and her sister. We've got Ataya Titikul and Patty Tavatanakit. They've won majors. They've reached the top of the world rankings. And I don't know, maybe Shannon Tan will be just like them one day. And she's definitely on the road. She's on the right track. And can I just talk very briefly about the Chevron Championship? Because it was an incredible tournament. A 5-way playoff it ended in. My Mao Saigo winning that. She was the one who came through, 23 years old from Japan, winning her first LPGA title as well as her first major. But it was just phenomenal having 5 players in that playoff. And I should add, Arya Jitanagan should have won it in regulation. All she needed was a par on that final hole. You know, so easy to say, isn't it? But when you've got that last few shots to win the title, I don't know what happened. She fluffed. She really did fluff. It was a slightly difficult shot, yes, but in the end, she did fluff her chip shot onto the green. She
That was the
on
one
in
that
four.
she should have tapped and it literally went like 2 centimeters. You know what? Every
It
single golfer
hardly
around the
moved.
world, we all said, one of us, one
Yeah.
of us, one
She
of
might,
us.
she might as well have
She's
just
human.
blown it. It didn't go anywhere, bless it. Now, before we go, it's time to find out what we're all looking forward to in the next few weeks. It's time for Any Other Business.
Well, the next stop on the World Surf League Tour is the Gold Coast, where 8-time world champion, the GOAT, Stephanie Gilmore, will make a surprise return as a wild card at her home break after spending 2 years away from competition. As well, down under, the A-League finals begin this weekend, and the undefeated Melbourne City women are looking to add the championship to their Premier's Plate in 2025. They also, as we mentioned, head to the Asian Women's Champions League finals later this month in China, and they're chasing the first title in the competition history. Now, if you're Australian, you also know that the State of Origin Rugby League represents one of the most passionate sporting rivals in the country. The best players across the NRL pull on a jersey representing the state where they started their junior careers. And the first game of the 3-game men's series is just over a month away.
Well, you mentioned the Asian Champions League for the women. The Asian Champions League 2 for the men is coming up really soon. The final will be played on the 18th of May, I believe. Now, this is the second tier below the ACL Elite, so that's the equivalent of the Europa League. But I have a vested interest because Singapore's very own Lion City Sailors have done the unthinkable and have become the first team from Singapore to qualify for an Asian AFC competition. I gotta say, they were a little bit lucky, and I tell you why. Because they came up against Hiroshima Sanfrecce in the first leg in the quarter final, and they were beaten 6-1, like properly beaten. But it later transpired that Hiroshima fielded an ineligible player. And so therefore that 6-1 result was annulled. And the Lion City Sailors were awarded a 3-0 victory for that first leg. They held on in the second leg. They drew 1-1 and then moved on to face Sydney FC in the semi-final. Sydney FC, obviously the big favourites there, but Lion City Sailors were able to use home ground advantage in that first leg. They won that 2-0. They lost the second leg 1-0, but they did enough in order to qualify for the final, where they will meet the UAE side, Sharjah, on May 18th. Just very quickly, there was a little bit of controversy about the venue for the final. By rotation, Singapore is meant to host it. It was initially supposed to be at the Jalan Besar Stadium, but Sharjah were not pleased at all with the fact that Jalan Besar has an artificial turf. They cited concerns over that, as well as other limited capacity and other things that they were not happy with. So they wanted it to be played in a venue, in their words, that was fitting of a continental final. So there was talk about shifting it to the National Stadium, which is natural turf, and it's huge. It's 50,000 capacity. But that was ruled out, unfortunately, because Lady Gaga is holding a concert that night, and there was no way they were going to move Lady Gaga to a different venue. I mean, could you imagine? So thankfully, in the end, AFC came up with a solution, and they're holding it at the Bishan Stadium, which is natural turf. Some necessary upgrades have to take place, which they are doing right now. They're fixing the floodlights, they're improving and upgrading the field, and they're adding more capacity as well. So that's all happening in the next 2 weeks, and it'll be ready to go by May 18th. And I suspect it'll be harder to get a ticket to this final than it will be for a Lady Gaga concert here in Singapore.
Well, in Europe, I think we're all waiting to see just how Harry Kane will celebrate his first ever trophy after he and his Bayern Munich team sealed the German Bundesliga title in the first weekend of May. Now, the England captain was suspended for their draw with RB Leipzig, but with Bayer Leverkusen drawing the next day, Bayern won their 34th league title. So we expect to see him in lederhosen, I'm sure, celebrating with his teammates. By the time we meet again on this sporting planet, we will know who will contest the Champions League, Europa and UEFA Conference League finals as the culmination of those competitions come to a head this month. And final fever will hit Wembley in May, with the oldest cup competition in the world, the FA Cup, to be won as Crystal Palace take on Manchester City in that final. And there's also the small matter of the playoffs, with the richest game in football, the Championship playoff final for the right to play in the Premier League, to be decided as well. So it's pretty busy.
Well, that's it for this episode. Make sure you subscribe to the show via your favorite podcast provider so you never have to miss an episode.
And if you head over to our YouTube channel right now, there's a bonus chat Todd Harris has been having with CBS's coordinating producer for golf, that's Sellers Shy, who takes us behind the scenes of Rory McIlroy's historic win at this year's Masters. Plus, we're really treating you. Well, you are spoiling you, in fact, this week, because on Monday, you can listen to another bonus chat Colette has been having with the sports journalist, commentator and documentary maker Onisha Ghosh about women's cricket in India. She's been sharing her insight on why the sport is in such good shape in the country.
Well, we can't wait for that one, and we can't wait to be back as a group in a couple of weeks reflecting on what is shaping up to be a pivotal month of sport. Until then, from myself, Colette and Natalie and the whole This Sporting Planet team, thanks for listening.